Okay, so today we're going to have another look at fast food. Now, we watched the documentary. Today we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through the exercise book. So, book's out, page 234, 235, 236, and then I'm going to give you a chance to do the questions in it, and then we'll go through the answers and see what you came up with. Now, food is a very, very important part of who you are. Everyone knows what goes in, what comes out. You know, garbage in, garbage out, and that's of everything. We all know that obesity is out of control in America. It's become a joke. When this book was written 20 years ago, it was a problem. When that documentary was made 10 years ago, it was a problem. But it's really out of control now. Almost everybody in America is overweight. I'm not saying that everybody die of being obese, but it's the number one killer. Heart disease is now the number one killer in America. And it seems like being promoted. We've got plus size models on television saying it's a fantastic thing to be overweight, I'm healthy at any size, and that is absolute garbage. There's no science to support that. We all know that the more fat you've got, the worse you are. The health concerns are significant. You're going to die of heart disease or cancer if you overeat to this degree. Eventually you are going to die of it.
And you're wondering, how did she get there? Slowly. It just ekes up on you. One day, when you wasn't looking, you're 150 pounds. And then, when summer comes, you're 180 pounds. And it doesn't matter if it's, well, I only had 2 hamburgers. Or I only had a glass of milk and 10 cookies. You're eating too much food. And that's what it comes down to, is gluttony.
Morbid obesity means you're to such a point where you are in danger of dying from this condition. And that's a serious problem. It's a problem that's affected my family. Back in the sort of 70s, 60s, this wasn't an issue in Europe and England especially. People were much healthier and fitter, and then things started to change. Food started to change. And it wasn't a shortage of food. It wasn't anything that we went over to because of necessity. It was all done for profit. And then there was also another reason behind the profits. We went over to extremely unhealthy processed foods. So instead of having foods that were naturally occurring, we were starting to make our own foods from chemicals and processes. Sausages are a great example of this. They call it mechanically recovered meat. So you kill a pig and you eat the pork, you eat the bacon, you eat all the other pieces of the pig, and then whatever's left, whatever scraps, the skin, the eyeballs, the bone marrow, all this kind of crap can be thrown into a machine, ground up, bleached, pounded, and processed out into sausage meat. There is no real value, there's no nutritional value. It has to be bleached, it has to be filled with salt and all sorts of other chemicals to make it edible. And it really isn't food. And it's not just like eating nothing, it's actually biologically damaging to eat this stuff, more damaging than eating meat by itself. And this has become the norm for our diets, and for no really good reason. We could have produced. We were literally paying farmers throughout the 80s and 90s not to make food. Not to make food. This is in a time where people halfway around the world were starving, and we were literally paying our farmers not to produce produce. This is a serious problem, and you've got to start wondering why. Why were they poisoning people? Why was this being allowed to happen? And it was being allowed to happen because control. If you look far enough back, and you're going to have to do your own research on this, the whole idea of this was if you can make people sick, you can then sell them medicine. And it goes round and round in circles, and eventually it leads to control. Now, America is the best example of this because people are not just getting sick, they are dying from this. This is causing diabetes. Now, if you eat lots of processed sugar, now and again, let's talk about sugar. White sugar is incredibly toxic. And most of you eat it every day without ever knowing because you never think about it for yourself. That's very dangerous. You'll notice that I only ever drink water. I've given up coffee now. I've replaced it with tea or whatever else I can get. I don't drink white sugar. I don't drink Coca-Cola or any of those kind of things because of the sugar content in them. They are extremely poisonous. What happens is when you make pure white sugar, you're cleaning out all the vitamins. What you're doing is you're bleaching it, you're killing everything except the sugar content. And that means that the sugar that we're left with, white sugar, is pure 100% carbohydrate. That doesn't happen in nature. We never ever get that. Sugars are always balanced in fruits and vegetables and all the other food that we get sugars from. They are balanced out by vitamins and minerals. When we get rid of those vitamins and minerals, it's incredibly unbalanced. So what we do is we put that sugar into our body, and it creates an incredible imbalance, and your body tries to survive. So what it does is it leaches all of the vitamins, all the minerals out of all the food in your stomach to survive, to try and balance the sugar content. Now, once all that in your stomach has been extracted to create a balance, then it starts looking to your organs and your bones. This is why we end up with tooth decay. This is why we end up getting sick from sugar, because it's leaching all of the nutrients from your body. We knew this hundreds of years ago when it all started with a washed up boat. We were getting sugar, we were processing it, and a shipwreck happened. All they had on board was sugar. So the crew ate the sugar, and by the time they found them, their brains were damaged. They were crazy, they were hallucinating, and they never recovered. They died. And this is because the sugar was incredibly toxic. And when you eat that with no balance, with no other nutrients, eventually it is going to kill you. And that's something we never talk about in terms of nutrition is, okay, we know it affects the body. We know that it affects your heart. We know it gives you cancer. We know it gives you diabetes, which is from consumption of too much sugar, especially fructose. Well, we'll get to that. And it causes all these imbalance that causes the organs to take damage. But your brain is another organ. These things push down your intelligence just the same as they push down all the other health things that contribute to your fitness and your health. This is a serious problem. And when we look at America, we've got a country with massive obesity and no idea whether they're male or female. And the education system isn't solely to blame. We've got a country where we've got very little pollution compared to other countries, pretty clean air relatively, and these people are dumber than anyone else in the world. You take an equivalent white person from Europe and from America, and there is a significant difference. And there is, and it's not just because of education. There's a serious problem. There's a gap between the two people. You see an American in a European city, you can always spot them. They talk differently. They have much more childish innocence to them. And I'm not saying that in a good way either. They just don't seem to understand the world around them. And this is pretty typical, and this is why they're not well liked throughout the world. They've lived in this arrogant little bubble where they've been treated like the richest country in the world for so long. They've become very arrogant, very demanding, and they don't think for themselves. They believe that they have this right to whatever they want. Now, the American food sources are banned in many other countries. You wouldn't get the kind of fast food junk in this country that you get there. And in Europe, most of their processed foods are restricted in some way. They're banned or they're restricted. A lot of the chemicals that they add to their food are illegal to add to the food in Europe because it's so toxic and so damaging, but they consume it every day. Now, to a point, I blame the people for this. We had somebody in a class say it's the government's fault. It really isn't. Okay, it is. I mean, the government are deliberately doing this. The people that make the fast food, again, are deliberately doing this. But ultimately, it comes down to every one of us being a human being with a choice. And the choices that these people have made have led them to their reality. And their reality is that they're losing control of their health, they're losing control of their country, and they're not fighting back. They're not making any protests about this. They're not saying no. At the moment, I read an article on Google News the other day where it said that they're trying to ban private ownership of firearms. Well, again, that's unconstitutional. That's the American Constitution guarantees them the right to bear arms. It guarantees them this right. Also, in the Constitution of America, any law maker trying to ban firearms is automatically removed from the government. And this is not happening, and they're not protesting enough. They're letting these things go. And it's got so bad that these people are now protesting to get rid of their rights. And you can see it all over the place. Look at Twitter. Elon Musk made a bid to take over Twitter, and straight away everyone was saying, no, free speech is bad. Do you see my point? How can free speech be bad? I don't like woke. I don't like woke people. I think they are the absolute scum of the earth. They are the lowest intelligence. They are just awful. They are the worst. They're left-wing Marxist idiots. They're useful idiots. And in communist terms, that means the people that help to drive their agenda and are then killed. And that's been true in all communist countries for decades, hundreds of years probably. They're useful idiots, but I do support their right to say what they want to say. Now, when you've got somebody saying, well, Twitter should be opened up so everybody's allowed to say whatever they want, and these people are saying, no, that's terrible, well, that pretty much sums them up. They are only able to make a point if you're not allowed to make an argument against them. And we've got a serious issue here. And this is what we're seeing with food. People have been dumbed down to this degree where no one thinks for themselves about what's in their food anymore. Nobody cares what's in their food anymore. They just blindly eat it and hope for the best. Now, there was a writer, his name just slipped out of my head. He wrote Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World. Now in that he said that in the future they won't control you by locking you up into a small box and making you do certain things, taking away your freedom, because it doesn't work. Eventually people fight back. Even in China we're seeing that now. Instead, what will happen is they'll give you too much garbage, too much nonsense, and you'll stop listening to what's important. And that's what we see. Look at foods. What food looks the most delicious? A burger, a pizza, a cake, or a salad? And which one would you choose if you were given those choices? And of course, most of us wouldn't choose the salad, although that's the only one there that's actually nutritionally healthy. It's good for you. Because the things that are bad look better. This is why instead of reading a book every night, you play on the internet, you play games. Because it's easier, it's more simple. It's more rewarding in the short term. But what it does is slowly erode away your humanity. Just like food of this kind slowly erodes away your health. And this is what we see. People have been dumbed down, simplified, and they don't realize anymore that the cheap and easy option is coming with a higher cost. So, fast food, page 2. The fast food industry sells much more than burgers, chips, and chicken wings. It is in the business of marketing family entertainment. Colourful restaurants provide fun and inexpensive places for family outings and eating. The popularity of large chains exemplifies how successful the industry has been at making convenience eating an integral part of family recreation and nutrition. So what we're talking about is these restaurants like McDonald's, and we don't get McDonald's here, which is a great thing. Burger King, Pizza Hut, which again we haven't had here probably because of all the other pizza companies that are more sort of relevant to this area. We get those kind of places. Families come in. The food is very, very simple, very cheap, very quick and easy to make, and it's all saturated fats. A friend of mine worked for McDonald's, and he said the boxes just come in, and it's just boxes of these frozen things that you just throw in the deep fat fryer. Any idiot kid can make them, and they're just full of garbage. We saw in the documentary yesterday a chicken sandwich had 100 ingredients. All of those chemicals are just toxins. McDonald's chips, they worked out something like 26 ingredients in the chips alone. Now a chip is supposed to be potato, oil, and maybe salt for taste. And they've added another 20 ingredients to that. And they won't tell you what they are. They're not required to tell you what those ingredients are. Healthy eating. Ideally, a balanced diet should contain a mixture of food from each of the 5 food groups. It is recommended that we have a daily intake of 4 or more servings of breads and cereals, in other words, complex carbohydrates, 4 or more servings of vegetables and fruit, 1 or 2 servings of meat, fish, eggs, poultry, or legumes. I would argue with that. 300 millilitres of dairy produce, and a maximum of 15 to 30 grams of butter or margarine. Balanced energy distribution is also important. 50 to 55% of the kilojoules of energy in a meal should be supplied by carbohydrates because they are more slowly digested and provide a more even energy release in the period between meals. A diet should not have more than 35% of its kilojoules provided by the fat content. Fat is the most energy-dense type of food, and if we consume more energy than is needed, the extra will be stored as fat in the body and we will gain weight. Protein will provide the remaining 15 to 20% of the kilojoules in a diet. Fast food companies argue that as well as selling entertainment and convenience, they are concerned about providing their customers with healthy, balanced meals. Although they concede their meals cannot supply all of the nutrients a person needs, they say their menus offer nutritious combinations of quality food products. We decided to find out if their claims are true. They're not. I would argue a few of the points here. Straight away, we're on a losing argument here. A maximum of 15 to 30 grams of butter or margarine. Butter and margarine are very, very different things. And this is where we start getting into a bit more complex area. The three main food groups are proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. Now, carbohydrates are the fuel that your body burns for energy. So in other words, sugars, but we're not talking white sugar, we're talking about natural sugars that occur in fruit, in starch products like potatoes, rice, grains, wheat, that kind of thing. We burn those for fuel, that's what we run on. Proteins are the cells that your body's made of. They're made of protein, so we need that protein to repair damaged cells. And the lipids, they do a job in lubricating everything like our joints and things like that. So we do need to eat a certain amount of fat. Now we get some fat from butters and margarines, and this is where it starts going wrong. Butter is made from churning milk. It's almost a natural product, and it's delicious, but margarine is made from plants. We take a lot of vegetable oil, we mix it up. Now vegetable oil, we don't get in nature, not that quantity. We don't get a load of oil from a plant, and we never cook it. When we do, we get trans fatty acid, and this is what's contributing as a processed food to the obesity epidemic. So we need to separate out the idea of these three food groups being responsible for the problem. It's not just that people are eating too many calories, and your body is a machine. Your body does obey the laws of physics. We see these people, these obese people saying, well, I don't eat that much. Well, of course you do, because your body, to a degree, is a machine. And you eat a certain amount of calories to stay alive. You eat more than that, your body stores it as fat. You eat less, your body burns the fat. It's as simple as that. Your body obeys the laws of physics. But there is more to it. The processed foods do encourage your body to store fat. They create hormones that control your body's intake and output of food, and we do store more as fat if we're eating the wrong kinds of foods. And that's without getting into things like hormones injected into food. Let's not even get into that. So what we tested and found. We tested the nutrient composition and energy balance of popular meal combinations from three major fast food chains. Number one, food chain Mr. Jake's. Meal combination, beef burger with cheese, large fries. The main problem with this meal combination is that it's too high in fat and sodium. The beef burger makes it a good source of protein, but it also has a high level of sodium contributed by the burger, cheese, and pickles. The salt sprinkled on the fries adds to the problem. Half the kilojoules in the meal come from fat, which makes it nutritionally unbalanced. It does provide useful amounts of fiber and is a moderate source of carbohydrates. Most of the carbohydrates come from the fries, which also contribute fiber, but unfortunately the fries are high in fat. Number two, Chicken Kitchen. 3 pieces of chicken in batter, potato and gravy, bread roll and coleslaw. The chicken is deep fried in batter, and the meal has the highest amount of energy from fat of all the fast foods tested. It also has the highest sodium. Luckily, all the other components of the meal, the potato and gravy, coleslaw and bread roll, are low in fat. The meal is also low in fiber and not well balanced. Not well balanced, shocking. The pizzeria, 2 slices of pizza, salad with dressing. The meal is the best balance of all the fast foods we tested. It has a lower fat content and it's high in carbohydrates and fiber, and has a better balance of energy distribution between the protein, fat and carbohydrates than the other fast foods tested. However, if you were to eat more than 2 slices, we estimate it as an average serving for one person, you would substantially increase your kilojoule intake. Of course, the problem with that is everybody has a different idea of servings. Pizzas are notoriously bad for this. It depends on the size of the pizza, then how do we know what the slices are? I mean, 2 slices of pizza in a pizza served in Cambodia isn't going to fill me up, but in America, 2 slices is probably more than enough. So it's very difficult to gauge the size of these. And of course, the pizzeria, giving it with salad, that's going to significantly change the outcome of this. But the pizza is going to be bread, it's going to be fried in oil, it's going to be dripping with it, and then it's going to be put into an oven, and the cheese is going to melt, and there's going to be fat everywhere. I like pizza, but not every day, and that's the problem. That's the problem. Let's see what they have to say about it. Overall, the popular meal combinations we tested were too high in fat, kilojoules and sodium to be eaten on a regular basis, and definitely were not suitable as between meal snacks. 2 kilojoules in these meals came from fat, making them unbalanced, except the meal from the pizzeria. Most contained too much fat and not enough cereals and vegetables. All the meals had more sodium than was desirable. The fried chicken meal had the worst balance of the fast foods tested. It was very high in fat and sodium and low in carbohydrates and fiber. All the meals were good sources of protein. I would argue that. The meals from the pizzeria and Mr. Jake's were more balanced, with the meal from Mr. Jake's containing the most fiber. I mean, I would argue that because, yes, okay, beef has more protein, but your body can't extract the protein. Again, this is the sort of thing I'm talking about. It's more complex than just what we see on the surface. Your body can't extract protein from meat properly. This is why bodybuilders don't eat meat. They don't eat red meat. They eat chicken, and they blanch the chicken by boiling the chicken down so that it's really soft, so that their body can break it down, because we are not meat eaters. When we eat meat, we substantially change the dynamics of what goes into our body and what comes out as a result. As an example, everybody says milk is full of calcium, and it is. There's a lot of calcium in milk, but we can't extract it because it makes our stomach acidic. Our bodies can't extract the calcium from the milk, and we actually lose calcium by drinking milk. We lose it from our bones. It's leached from our bones to balance the imbalance caused by drinking a foreign animal's milk. My father has osteoporosis, so his bones are smaller than they should be, and he's medically not allowed to drink milk. And when he was first told this by the doctors, he questioned it and said, well, this makes no sense. It's full of calcium, isn't it? And they just laughed and said, everyone thinks that. It's all nonsense. It actually reduces your ability to absorb calcium. So as a person who needs more calcium, he has to take calcium supplements, and he's not allowed to drink milk or take any dairy products. That's how crazy the world is. You're told something, you're not told that it's not true. You're told meat has protein. Well, yes, it does, because it's literally a muscle. But you're not told you can't get that protein out. It'd be like me giving you a new phone in a locked box and saying, there you go, there's your new phone. You can't get the phone out unless you buy the key from me. It's ridiculous. Okay, conclusions. The occasional fast food meal would not do any harm if eaten as part of a balanced diet. However, regularly eating foods that are high in kilojoules, sodium and fat, and low in fiber and carbohydrates may increase the risk of diet-related health problems, including coronary heart disease, which is exactly what we see, high blood pressure, obesity, diabetes, and possibly even some types of cancer. Overconsumption of fast foods could put you at risk of these health problems. Children in particular should be discouraged from buying fast foods as snacks on their way home from school. On the other hand, there is nothing wrong with dinner at a fast food outlet, providing you choose judiciously from their menus and not make such outings a habit. I would agree that eating unhealthy food once in a while is fine, so long as it's accepted that it is an unhealthy food. What we've got is these Americans who don't realize the damage they're doing to themselves, and they're blindly blundering along, eating nothing but unhealthy fast foods, and then laughing about it like it's great. It doesn't matter. It does matter. Me, I eat healthy all week. As an example, I usually skip breakfast. I don't usually have time for breakfast. I usually go home for lunch if I get time. We have simple food. We don't have a lot of fried food. Try to have all my vegetables steamed in the rice cooker. We try and eat very healthy, and then at weekends we'll relax, have curries and pizzas and whatever. But we try to eat healthily during the week, and I think we've got a good balance. So long as you understand that the balance has to be struck, then I think you're going to be okay. But we've got a very unbalanced system now in America, and it's slowly getting unbalanced in Europe too. We'll see where this goes. But anyway, so questions 1 through 8, and then we'll see what you came up with. Okay, so I gave you 8 questions. Let's see what you've got as the answers. So how do fast food restaurants attract families? Well, by appealing to children is the answer, by having these entertaining restaurants, as it says in the first paragraph, large chains. Large chains is a great way of connecting with the audience, because the audience, which is primarily children, recognise them everywhere. You get the idea with it's different here, but if you got used to Burger King, you could go from one Burger King to another and expect the food to be exactly the same. And it's the same with McDonald's in America, only cheaper. McDonald's is like the basic level. So anywhere you go, the burger's going to be the same, the chips are going to taste the same, everything is going to be the same. And that's quite appealing, because you always recognise that big golden arch, that big yellow M signal. You're going to be seeing that everywhere you go, and you're going to know exactly what to expect, and that it's cheap, and people go there. It works. It's branding. What does it mean if something is an integral part of your life? It means it's built in. If it's integral, it's part of who you are. It's an important part. Food is a very important part of who you are. I would argue that it's you that makes the choices, and those choices have consequences. What is meant by a balanced diet? Well, a balanced diet has all the different things you need. You need a certain amount of carbohydrates, you need a certain amount of protein, you do need a certain amount of fat, you need a certain amount of vitamins, so you've got to have a diet that provides all of those things in the right balance. Now, there is a flexibility to the balance. In Europe, we eat, I think it's about 30 to 50% carbohydrates. In Japan, they eat 60 to 80% carbohydrates, and they still don't get fat, because the balance works in a different way. They're eating more carbohydrates, but they're balancing it out with less protein. We actually need way less protein than you think. So long as you're not eating the processed foods, mostly you're going to be okay. Why are meals with high fat content not recommended? Because fat is a terrible way of giving us energy. Our bodies can barely break it down, so mostly we store it. It's too dense. It's like trying to put a nuclear explosion into a battery to charge it. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's too much power. So bodies can't break it down and make use of it. So it's too energy dense. And mostly all our body does is store it. It's like with carbohydrates. Because we come from a hunter-gatherer past, we're used to not being able to eat huge amounts. So what we do is we store energy, and we store the energy as fat. So if we get a chance to eat loads and loads of carbohydrates, great, we'll take it. And our body will say, well, I don't know when I'm going to get this amount of food again. So it stores it as fat. And the problem is we don't then burn that fat off, so we get more fat. That's how it works. Which of the meals combinations tested the least fat and which contain the most fibre? Least fat, I think, was the pizza. But it's not the pizza. The pizza is going to be very dependent on the toppings, and it came with a salad instead of fries. So I think it was an unfair test. What health problems might develop if fast food is eaten too often? Christ. All of them. Heart disease, you get diabetes, which is when your body can't process sugar anymore, so it shuts down. We've got liver damage, cancer eventually. So there's a lot of different things, and that's without all the other side issues. Like a friend of mine's got gout. He ate a lot of fatty products. His liver couldn't process it anymore, so he got this disease where he's getting vein problems in his feet, where his feet are agonizing pain, where the blood isn't flowing around his feet anymore. It's not good. I've done that one. What two main conclusions were drawn from the research on fast food? I would say that the two main conclusions are these things are bad for you, they contribute to serious health problems, children should be discouraged from it, but they're okay if part of a balanced diet. So it's okay if everything else you eat is healthy, and you make accommodation for the fact that you're going to eat crap when you go out to one of these restaurants, because it is junk. So the conclusion is these things are bad for you, but you have to make smart choices. Even in the conclusion it says judiciously from their menu. You've got to choose very carefully, and you've got to be a very careful judge of what you eat. Now, you don't want to go into a restaurant where there's a menu and there's only a couple of things that are healthy, and you have to be very careful to choose those things. That's ridiculous. That's why these things suffer so much. Fast food companies say their menus offer nutritious combinations of quality food products. From the information provided by the report, do you think this claim is true for the fast food tested? If not, how would you modify the meal combinations to make them more nutritious? Right, well, it's obviously not true. It's obviously patently a lie. They are not nutritious foods. They are delicious foods, and they work by making you want them, but they don't work as part of a healthy, balanced diet. And they should be saying that. They should be admitting that. If you want to make them healthier, cut out the processed foods. It can be done. Take the pizza as an example. Making a Mariana sauce. If I make pizza, I make it at home sometimes. I make the sauce. It takes about an hour or so to make tomatoes and onions and all the other stuff into a Mariana sauce to put on your pizza. It tastes way, way better if you make it yourself, but it takes tomatoes, it takes ingredients, it takes time, it takes energy. So these companies don't bother, they just buy a big jar of it and spread it on. That's the problem. It's full of preservatives and chemicals, and because the flavor's dull, they add colouring and they add sugar and they add all the other stuff that makes it toxic. So the only way to do it would be to go to a more expensive restaurant, which adds cost. But what we really need to do is stop allowing these processed foods to exist. We really do. We really need to go back to real food, and we need to start demanding that we get a better standard of service from our governments, from our food suppliers, from the corporations. They are vile. And one of the worst corporations, Nestle, where the director actually said on a news conference, water isn't a human right, you should pay for it. It literally falls out of the sky, but they want to own it and sell it back to you. And these are the kind of scumbags that we're dealing with when we talk about this stuff. So I hope that gives you something to think about, and I hope you make the right choices. Thank you very much.